Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. Welcome to my channel. So today I am going to be reviewing Haruki Murakami's 1Q84, which I just finished reading a few days ago, and I've had a little bit of time to process reading it, though I haven't really come to any more conclusions other than the ones that I had upon finishing it, because I just went on to another book, which is kind of maybe not a good habit to have. Maybe I need to allow the books that I read to process in my mind before I start another one. Yeah. So, this book, number one, this is going to be, well, I don't want to say it's going to be spoiler free. I'll try to make it spoiler free, but I don't know. It may have some spoilers in it. But first I want to start off by showing you my tabs. Oh, so I've got quite a few tabs in here. It's not a lot in comparison to how big this book is.
A few moments later.
So the reason why there aren't as many tabs in here in comparison to how big the book is because I listen to a great deal of it on audio. I listen to about 90%, 95% probably of it through Audible, because I do data entry work and we're allowed to listen to music, to whatever we want to listen to through our headphones the entire day, with the exception of like if we have calls or if we're answering the phones or whatever the case may be. But other than that, I can pretty much listen to my earbuds for 8 hours of the day. Well, about 10 hours. Yeah, 10 hours of the day, since I commute as well. But so 95% of this was consumed through audio. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna read the blurb on the back. A love story, a mystery, a fantasy, a novel of self-discovery, a dystopia to rival George Orwell's, and I assume he's talking about 1984. But 1Q84 is a tremendous feat of imagination from one of our most revered contemporary writers. And what more can I say than that? I mean, that is true. That blurb is the truest blurb that ever did blurb. Ultimately, though, this is a love story, and it has elements of fantastical realism, magical realism. It's set in two different worlds. So it's set in the standard world that you and I know, in the year 1984, and then there's this other world, this world with two moons, called 1Q84, coined such by one of the main characters, Amame, and then coined as the Cat Town by the other main character, who is Tango. His name was Tango. And so this story is ultimately about them. They knew each other in elementary school. They were in the 3rd grade together. They were in the same class. Amame, she was an outcast, and Tango, he was more of a popular student. He got really good grades. He was like this prodigy in math. He had friends, and well, he didn't really have friends, but people looked up to him. People admired him because of how intelligent he was. And Amame, she was the total opposite. But you think that these people have nothing in common, but as you get into the story, you realize that their lives are actually quite similar, because Amame, she was the daughter of a very religious family, or rather, her family belonged to a cult. It's not called as much in the story, but it was. She belonged to a cult. And every Sunday she would have to go and proselytize to the town with her parents, because that was a part of their cult-like behavior. They had to go and essentially knock doors and talk to people, try to recruit people into their cult, essentially. And Tango, his father was a fee collector, or he was what we know today as bill collectors. And what he would do is he would take Tango every Sunday to knock doors, to get people to pay their subscription to the cable company. And so, because apparently anybody that had a TV in Japan at the time, they had to pay that subscription, you know, I guess because that was the only way they could watch TV or something like that. It was something like cable. And that was the one commonality that they shared, was that they both had to go spend their Sundays walking around town, knocking on people's doors, and neither one of them wanted to. The only difference there was that Amame was sort of outcasted because she belonged to a cult. So, and she had to say this really long prayer at lunch, and people thought that she was weird for that. And Tango, on the other hand, again, he was so smart. He had redeeming quality. So he wasn't an outcast by any means because of the fact that his father was a bill collector. It was mainly because when people invited him to outings, he couldn't go because on Sunday he was out with his father all day collecting bills. And so essentially this is a love story about two people who never really forgot each other after a certain event happened in their childhood where Tango stood up for Amame, and she thanked him one day when she caught him alone in the classroom. She thanked him by running up to him and grabbing his hand and holding it for a few seconds, and neither of them ever forgot that moment. And what you see is, when you get a little further into the story, you see it's revealed to you, because from the beginning, it's not revealed to you that that young girl was Amame. You know that the boy was Tango, but you don't know that the little girl that was an outcast was Amame. So you get into the story, you get about, no, I wouldn't say halfway, but you get a little bit into the story, and you find out that the little girl was Amame, and that Tango never forgot that moment, and that neither one of them could really have normal relationships with anybody else, normal amorous relationships with anybody else, because they were holding out for each other. So at its core, 1Q84 is an 1156 page love story. It's this story of these two people trying to find their way back to each other. And that is so beautiful. I love that. It was so simple and pretty easy for you to guess, because I guessed that the girl was Amame. And when it was revealed to me, I was like, well, that makes sense. Well, that's what this is about. And that really is what 1Q84 is about. And so I have two kind of warring thoughts about this book. The first one is that it's excellent. I thought it was excellent. I loved Amame and Tango. I loved Tango a bit more. I wouldn't say that I loved Amame, let's be honest. I liked Amame as a character, and even then she had to grow on me, because from the onset I wasn't really digging her as a character. But as the story progressed, and as you learned more about her, and as bits and pieces of her life were revealed, it's like I really enjoyed her character. She was a very sort of complex character, though a little bit, like, you can tell she was written by a man. You can tell that she was written by a man. but I think that's sort of what kind of made me not feel Amame as much as that I could tell that she was written by a man, and that it's, you know, there's a certain tone, there's a certain attitude, there's a certain way that women view themselves in fiction when they are written by men a lot of the time. And it's very objectifying. It's very much surface level. It's very much about like what you look like, and very much looking like the objective standard of beauty, which really isn't a reality for most women. And so that's the only reason why I kind of didn't really, I was like, she's kind of a one-dimensional kind of character. But as you learn more about her, she definitely becomes a better character in my opinion, and she kind of transforms from being this one-dimensional character. And I do think that she had a pretty decent character arc throughout the story. And Tengo, I love Tengo from the beginning. I think it comes a little bit more naturally for a man to write a man because that's what he's been his whole life. And so it rings a lot with a lot more truth when a man writes a male character, which is why I think from the beginning it was easier for me to follow Tengo. I enjoyed his chapters. He's a very passionate character. He's a writer, and again, he's this mathematician. He's so intelligent, although he lives this very boring life. The only spicy thing is the fact that he's kind of involved in, he is involved in a dodgy love affair. Other than that, like, his character I thought was great, very complex, and his story was one that rung true to me as a reader, and that didn't necessarily happen from the beginning with Amame. Those reasons I just mentioned, and also because Haruki Murakami is an amazing, baby girl. I'm so sorry, I don't know how else to describe it. His writing is baby girl. I love his writing. Is addictive. I didn't want to put it down at the beginning, and we'll get to that. His writing is just so beautiful and so it's so exquisite, and it's so easy to take in, so easy to digest. His writing is phenomenal. Objectively, Haruki Murakami is he's so gifted. I don't think you could ever take away from him that he is a masterful writer. I don't think anyone could ever take that away from him, whether or not you enjoyed the story or whatever. You can't say, reading his work, that it isn't beautiful and that it's not written with care and with precision. Especially reading Tengo's, if I can just find, and then he's funny as well, like, what? I'd love that. So I'm gonna read a passage that he wrote on page 412, so almost in the middle of the book, and it goes like this. The man's gray suit had countless teeny wrinkles, which made it look like an expanse of earth that had been ground down by a glacier. One flap of his white dress shirt's collar was sticking out, and the knot of his tie was contorted as if it had twisted itself from the sheer discomfort of having to exist in that place. The suit, the shirt, and the tie were all slightly wrong in size. The pattern on his tie might have been an inept student's impressionistic rendering of a bowl of tangled, soggy noodles. Each piece of clothing looked like something he had bought at a discount store to fill an immediate need. But the longer Tengo studied them, the sorrier he felt for the clothes themselves, for having to be worn by this man. Like, what? Like, what a way to describe someone that looks crazy. What more can you say after reading a paragraph about someone looking like an idiot? Like, what more can you say? You can't say anything else. And one thing you can't take away from Murakami is that he is a great writer. And so that's why it feels like a it feels an injustice. It feels like an injustice. That was the word I was looking for in this cut. Not good to rate this book anything less than the 4.5 star that it is objectively. But then we got to like the weird stuff and the fantastical realism part of it. I'll just say that it involved cults, it involved sex, a lot of sexual intercourse and describing of genital parts and just all the things that I just did not want to hear. Like, he did it because this whole plot, this whole fantastical realistic plot, this mystery was a means of bringing these two characters together, because the way he had it set, otherwise they would have never run into each other again. And those things, the sex, the cults, and the way that even Christianity and God are written about in this book just kind of set me on edge, and I didn't really like it. You know, as a Christian, I just thought it was like, I thought that was unnecessary. I thought it didn't need to be there. Of course, I know that for the story, in order for it to be an 1100 page romance, it did need to be there, but you know, I could have done without it. And there were times where it's like, you know what, maybe this is not the book for me.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But yeah, so I rated it 4.5. I think 4.5 is a proper rating for it, and maybe even higher than that, maybe even a 5, because I mean, if we're talking about parts 1 and like half of part 2, man, maybe even all of part 2, like I would rate that 5 stars, because I could listen to that, I could read that over and over and over again, barring both Amame and Tango's questionable like personal sexual escapades. I could do without those, but the story in and of itself is so good, it's so rich, and I love the way that Murakami brought them together at the end. It was weird, but I mean, he did it. The story got where it needed to go, so you know, it arrived. So I mean, hey. But those were really all my thoughts about 1Q84. I can't say that I can't say that I enjoyed it as much as I want to say that I enjoyed it, but the parts that I did enjoy, I enjoyed immensely. The parts that I liked, I really liked. And the parts that I didn't like, I really didn't like. They really didn't sit well with me. And so that's why it's kind of like all over the place. But I hope that I was able to explain this book well enough, and just generally the general outline of the story, without giving spoilers and without giving away too much detail, and being too colorful with it. So all in all, this book is a 4.5 star for me, and I hope that wherever you are, that you have a good day and that you read a good book, and I'll see you in the next one.